Hey guys, it's your host Julian. This week I'm sitting down with Bob's Burgers director for the Hurt Soccer, Damon Wong. I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons that help support this podcast. Bill, Brent, Eight-Legged Bird, Jacob, Jordan, and Monique. Thank you all so much for your support. It truly means a lot. If you want to become a member of our Patreon channel to help support this show and get all of these episodes early and ad-free, check the link below and sign up today. Now, let's get to that chat with Damon.
But while we're here, dude, it's just we're doing a deep dive into Bob's Burgers, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to keep that train rolling.
All right.
So as we do with almost everybody, well, not almost, literally everybody that has on that we have on the show, is we love to hear about first days or how you got onto a show, man. So take us back, man. How do you find out about Bob's and how do you get to working on Bob's?
Oh, okay. Um, Let me think. I actually started my career in animation with Lauren Bouchard
Hmm.
in home movies.
Love it.
Yeah, and then that was in Watertown, Massachusetts. And then that was in like 2000.
Hmm.
And then you know, all that stuff happened and then I think he quit the company and then he went off to San Francisco, and he was just kind of doing the freelance thing. And I eventually quit, and I was doing freelance for the company that did home movies, which was Soup to Nuts. It doesn't exist anymore. Um, and then I think I think it was like one day. I think I his wife actually worked at the same company. Like they met each other there, and Lauren doesn't have like a Facebook page, but his wife does. And then she shouts out like, "My husband just is watch a show Bob's Burgers on Fox. It's coming out." And then I was working on PBS show, and then I just texted her to talk to
Hmm.
him. So I wrote, "Hey, I heard your husband is working on a new show. I want in, right?" And then I hear from I think Lauren just like sent me an email saying, "All right, I'll try and make it work, but we're kind of like in the middle of the season, so all the production is filled right now. So you're gonna have to wait for the next season to come." Um, and then a year passed, and I kind of gave up on it. Right? I thought it was just some Hollywood stuff where they're just like, "Okay, well, we'll talk. Don't call us, we'll call you." And then like one day, like an associate producer called me and said, "Okay, we have some openings. Do you know like Storyboard Pro and all these like the software that they use?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I do, but I really didn't." So I just,
Always
I
say
was,
yes.
yeah, I was traveling there. No, I was traveling from Massachusetts to Hawaii, and I stopped off in LA, and then I just kind of like familiarized myself with the. I met with Lauren, and I met with the people there, and it was just early on, so like a lot of the directors there aren't like not even there anymore. Um, but that's when I did like a day or two of training, and then yeah, I got the job that way. I don't know. I feel like I kind of just got it like in the back door. It's just like I knew the guy. He liked my work. And then I saw I saw that he had a show, and I took advantage of my connections with. I think I knew his wife, so I
Yeah,
asked her. Yeah. Um, yeah. I think that's still how a lot of people get jobs nowadays. But
a hundred
um,
percent. It doesn't matter what industry you're in.
yeah. And then I think I started on second or late second season.
Hmm.
Like the first episode I worked on was the shark one.
Oh, the
Yeah,
one at the wharf where it was the Jaws parody.
yeah, that was the first one I worked on. That was very different, very different from what I was used to working with him in Massachusetts. Like it was very like Hollywood know like they know what they're doing. And I can only compare I don't know, I've never been in the military, but I can only compare it to the military that they like once they have their mindset on doing something, it gets done, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah. So uh but usually it's like hurry up and wait kind of thing in
that's
Hollywood. But
military.
yeah. But yeah, once they got going, it was just like they had everything in place. It was they had a system, and if you didn't, you know, it's kind of like if you don't work in the system, it kind of messes things up. So uh, it was very different. Like I was very used to like working in home movies, which was very small operation stuff. But this was like, it has union attached to it. Uh, you know, I don't know, like 50 times more names in the credits than home movies ever did, and uh, probably a little less like creative freedom there. But you know, everyone there is like top notch professional, so it was good.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I don't get to do too much home movies talk, but while we're on this one just for a second, um, that was the first Adult Swim series I saw. I'm sitting there, fuck, dude, maybe 12, 13 by the first time I see it. It'd been out for at least a season or two. And I'm just flipping the channels. Or excuse me, I'm laying in bed. I'm supposed to be asleep, but I'm flipping the channels and
Yeah,
shit,
yeah,
making sure I get the volume all down so my mom doesn't come in and know I got the little TV on and shit. And I remember seeing this, and the voice is what caught me. Right? The voice cast was just so distinct, and the animation style was just so different. And I'm looking at this, and I'm going, dude, what the fuck is this? This is so cool. This isn't Dexter. This isn't Hey Arnold. This isn't
yeah,
Samurai Jack. What is this? I'd never seen Adult Swim. I was like, did we sign up for a package? Because my mom was known for that back in the day. She signed up for HBO, not realizing it.
yeah, yeah.
So I was like, did we sign up for a package? My mom just didn't realize it. I see that it's on Cartoon Network, channel 36 when I was growing up. It's still channel 36 now, but I was just like, what is going on? I was just mesmerized, and that led into something else, which led into something else. And, long story short, man, I've been a fan of his ever since. But I loved what you guys did on that show, man. We're going to talk about that one. If you have fun on this episode, I'd love to have you back on it so we can do a deep dive into home movies because that's a show I don't think gets enough love, from anybody.
Yeah, it just made me feel really old. Like I was 12 when you watched the show, and I was like, oh man, I was stressing out in a cubicle back during that time.
Well, man, you guys crushed it on that show back then. So like I said, I would love to have you back on just so we could talk home movies. But Bob's Burgers,
Mhm.
man. So when you said you had the connection of knowing him, knowing his wife, and saying, "Hey, I really want to work on that show," did you have to come in and do any kind of pencil test? Do you have to do any kind of board test or anything like that? Do you remember?
Uh, no, I didn't have to do a board test at all. I I don't know. I guess they just believed me that I worked on like I knew Storyboard Pro.
Hmm.
Uh, I'm sure if they hear this interview, they'll be like, "What do we are this guy?" But I was very confident that I could learn the program within a certain amount of time. Because
What were you using before? Do you remember?
Flash,
Flash.
uh, like yeah, it's Adobe Animate now, but yeah,
Hmm.
back then it was called Flash. And then before that, on home movies, it was a DOS program called like Animate, I
Hmm.
think. Yeah, it was really yeah, it was a DOS based program that only used like 32 colors. So it wasn't that advanced. But then once we got to Flash, then home movies was mostly that. But then I think in LA they used Toon Boom a lot,
Hmm.
which is I think it's a Canadian company, and they do yeah.
So when you get onto you Bob's, obviously you got to learn a new program. Obviously you crushed it because you're still there now, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You've done quite some time at Bob's. But do you remember what that first day was like walking into Bento Box or working with those guys at Bob's Burgers?
The first day was I don't know. I mean, hmm. I mean, I was just kind of. I mean, the reason why I was going to Hawaii and traveling in between, and I stopped over was because I was actually burying my brother, so I was kind of
Oh wow,
depressed. I was pretty
yeah.
depressed, and then I just had like lunch with Lauren, and I remember it was different. Like Lauren was like I think Hollywood has like a certain culture to it where
Mhm.
it's like there's talent and then there's assistance, and to watch him be the talent. And when you ever seen that SNL skit where they're like the assistant is trying very hard not to have you meet with the talent?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of like that, where it's like, oh, he's like the important guy in the office.
Don't
Like,
look at him. Don't shake his hand. Don't
yeah,
ask him
yeah, yeah.
questions.
I think at some point one producer, like executive producer, said like, I know you're good friends with him, but don't talk to him directly or something. It was just like And I remember there was another producer that worked on home movies. That he said before he went to LA, he moved to LA from Massachusetts. He said it was actually easier to call and talk to Lauren than it was when he moved there. Like I think they have so many roadblocks that I'm not even sure he's aware of it, but uh, there's people that kind of schedule his whole,
Mhm.
creative outlet, and they kind of protect him from like, uh, I guess fans or anybody that wants to interrupt his flow. I'm not really sure, but yeah, I remember trying to get lunch with him, and I was like, "Oh, I know Lauren. We're gonna have lunch together." And they're like, "I don't know
The
about
fuck you are.
yeah." I was just like, "What is this?" I just want to have reschedule the lunch. I'm gonna talk to him. I'm just gonna have like a sandwich with him. That's all we did. Stopping over. But yeah, I was very appreciative that he got me that job because I think when I quit the job, I was moved to like I think the only it was like a time period where like all the animation was closing down in every other city,
Mhm.
even in like New York, and everything was just kind of like moving to like Canada or LA, and so I had to end up doing like software, like educational software, and I remember just being depressed during that time period because I was like, I think I belong in TV, or I think I should be telling stories.
Mhm.
And then when I got like back in TV, I was just, I felt better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't doing like educational stuff, which is as good as it is. It's not. It's just like I'm trying to teach like shapes and words and concepts, and that's not me. It's just like I need a story to kind of just illustrate, and I'm better at that. You know.
Everybody's got to be fulfilled in what they do. I mean, you get taken away from your home, you get taken away from your family for an extended period of time, and you got to make sure that whatever you choose to do during that time that you're away is beneficial to you both financially, mentally, emotionally, as douchey as it sounds, spiritually, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
Um, for what I do for a living, I'm gone out of my house for damn near 12 to 14 hours a day, including travel. Financially, it's okay, I get to scratch an itch, creatively, cooking and
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
like that. But when I'm sitting around and I just don't feel like I need to be there, I was like, all right, man, kind of hard to throw yourself in this 100% if you feel like you should be needed somewhere else, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you're being wasted away.
Yes, yes,
You know.
wasting time. And you never
Yeah.
get that shit back.
Yeah. Like I think everyone kind of goes through that, even if they're in like the same field. Like right now, I'm like in my 40s, so I'm like in my prime midlife crisis at the moment. So I'm just like, even though I'm in the field that I want to be in, part of me is just like, am I where I want to be at 40? Shouldn't I be like directing? Shouldn't I be carrying my own show? Should I be like, this and that? But um,
Are you
uh,
having fun?
uh it's kind of hard because like I work abroad.
Mhm.
I work from Rhode Island, and then I can see message boards at Bento Box, and they're having way more fun than I am.
Yeah,
They get like free lunches, they get like parties that they get to go to, and these are fancy parties too.
yeah.
Just like, they had a Christmas party, and I was just like, they have like table gambling at this Christmas party. Yeah, I remember going to one premiere party, and it was it was way better than any Christmas party that I've been to at any other company. I worked at Scholastic, and they don't. I think they do it next level at like in Hollywood. Like if
Yeah.
they don't, if no one's splurging a large amount of money, um, they're not doing it right in Hollywood. And everyone's good looking there, so everything seems better.
Have you thought
So,
about relocating?
many times, many times.
Yeah.
It's always been just like I don't know. Like in my head, I always think that's where all my friends are. That's where my industry is. That's where I have a lot more options.
Mhm.
But that traffic, man, that traffic is really. It really like if you do the math, like I remember I went there to direct that one episode and I was there for like 2 months and I was commuting to work and back from my friend's house and it was like 45 minutes there, 45 minutes back. And then I remember late at night, I drove like at 2 o'clock at night from the house there and it only took me 12 minutes.
Yeah.
So the traffic was always at a standstill. And I just did the math in my head. It's like, okay, every day I spend like an hour and a half in the car, multiply that by 5. That's a whole day of work. I'm stuck in a car. I could be ahead of my work, doing, getting ahead of my work, just being at home. But I miss out on like the social stuff, like,
Yeah, and that's definitely beneficial too, that social stuff.
yeah. It was weird like when I went back for that time. It was like kind of like, everyone's you kind of first year like you jumping back into like the office politics where people don't like these other people and everything.
Yeah.
But then you're just like, oh, these are my people, right? They know all the cartoons that I watched. Some of them even worked on them, It's like I remember meeting Mario and he was just telling me, oh, he's a chef too. He actually I think he did uh Animaniacs and then
hmm
times got tough in Hollywood and then oh, you can take him if you want. So my wife can.
Oh, no worries.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, Mario, yeah, he worked on like a bunch of episodes, like a bunch. I made him feel old when I said like I used to watch it when I was 13. But yeah, and then there's another guy. He was like Tom. That's all I know. Tom Larimore. Tom, but he worked on like with a like he's not a legend in Hollywood, but he worked with all the legends in Hollywood. It's like
Yeah.
all the people that worked at Disney and everyone that has a big name and did, like who's the guy that like helped out Kobe Bryant in his animation?
Oh, Glenn Keane.
Yeah, I think he even worked with he worked with that guy and he worked with so many other people. He worked on like Lion King or something.
hmm
But yeah, it's just like wow, these guys. And it was weird because like all the animation like people that worked in like Massachusetts were just like in their 20s. But when you go to like LA, like everyone there is just like old. They're like have
Yeah.
families and they have like pensions and you're like, oh,
Mortgages and 401ks.
yeah. They're like worried about like, I need 2 more years then I can qualify for pension. I get my pension. Everything's like a cop, it's just like I just need this one more year and I can support my family after I die. Just like, oh, jeez. But yeah, it was like a profession over there. Like, while like I think in Massachusetts, it felt more like I had a side gig and I'm just making it my full time job.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and the professionalism there was just it's different. I don't know. There's like I mean there's a lot of like messed up stuff going around in Hollywood, of course. There's a lot of drugs and stuff, but um, they did it professionally. It was not like like
Above board drug use, if you will, ladies and gentlemen.
you're not gonna get demonetized, or
Ah, fuck it.
yeah.
Let's go.
So like home movies. I was working in Watertown, Massachusetts, and it was the same place where like it was the same neighborhood where the Boston those two brothers like that bombed the Boston Marathon were like
Mhm.
hiding out. It was like the same neighborhood that we worked at, and I remember I was good friends with the studio drug dealer there. And that's what I knew, right? I was like, uh, you knew the guy who did, dealt the drugs, and he knew where to get it, and then, there was a lot of messed up stuff that happened during lunch breaks. But then, like, I went to LA, like, it was very hard to figure out who the studio drug dealer was, if there was one. And I think I asked a guy he worked for Family Guy, and he was just like, "Well, you get the assistants; they'll get it for you." I don't know how to
Jesus
get in.
Christ.
Yeah, they're like he did movies and he said like they'll get you they'll get you cocaine if you want it, just so that you don't leave the office or something. And I'm like, are you? Is he just kidding me? But I'm just I'm more apt to like believe him now because
Yeah.
yeah, just
Shit gets done over there.
yeah, she gets done, and people treat the talent way more important than legal stuff. Like I like there's some like people that like creative, like the creators of like really prestigious shows, and I've heard like rumors that are just like he's met like not Me Too like level of
Yeah.
debauchery, more like he doesn't leave the office. He pees in a trash can, and then uh they have to make sure that the janitors know that he does that and to take out his pee. It's just like, and this guy is like a lot of people love his show, and
Yeah.
and if I didn't know that, I'd
What's the name rhyme with? I'm just kidding. Don't throw any names out there.
be surprised who it was. Um, but it's not the ones that it's not like any of the Cartoon Network guys that you probably like growing up with, but it's very wholesome.
Yeah.
It's a wholesome show that one of the characters that does our voice on Bob's Burgers did the voice on that show too.
Hmm.
You could probably derive that from that. But anyway,
I'll put my detective hat on earlier and get to the bottom of the office pisser, if you will, Damon. Um, something I want to circle back to that you were talking about. You know, you said you flew out there to work on the episode you directed and the Hurt Soccer. I just rewatched this one because I'm going back and rewatch. I don't know if I told you this part, but so I've seen this series a few times through now. I started watching this one when it first came out. I don't know if it was the first year it came out, but I remember seeing the pilot pretty close to when it came out. And then when I deployed a couple times, they had the first like season or two on DVD that I could rent out from like the ship library, and I would watch this, and it would be one of those things that ended up in my rotation of TV shows when I deployed. So I've been
yeah,
hooked on the show since it came out, 2011, right?
yeah,
And just recently, I was trying to get like reacquainted with some of the older episodes, and plus, I was just in that mood to just go back and rewatch something before the new season came out. And I noticed, I've done this so many times, so ladies and gentlemen, I apologize, but like my oldest son and my wife, whenever we're watching something, they've always got their phone and they're always just fucking scrolling. They might look up every once in a while and pay attention,
yeah,
right? And I noticed that they would start to like, look at the screen, and I was like, this is a social experiment here. Let's see how long this goes. A couple episodes go by. I get a chuckle out of them. And I'm like, are you guys watching this? I'm like, yeah, this is actually pretty funny. I was like, no, it's not pretty funny. It's fucking hilarious that's the wrong term to use for this show. So I was like, all right, if we're going to watch this, we're going to go all the way back to season one, all the way back to episode one. And I think with them now, I think we're on season 7 or 8, somewhere around there now. So we've
yeah,
been watching a couple, as long as my oldest doesn't have karate or we don't have anything going on, like we've been watching like 2 episodes, maybe 3 episodes every other night or something like
yeah,
that. So I've been rewatching this shit with them, and it's a lot of fun getting to share the show with somebody else because you guys' humor is so unique. It's so like the fucking writing on the show is insane, excuse me. And going back and watching The Hurt Locker again, I forgot just like how fun this episode was. Watching it, I know you said it was pretty stressful having to drive, an hour and
yeah.
a half, collectively two in there to direct this one. So, what year, do you remember what year this might have been for you to go and direct this?
Oh man, I forget. It's kind of like I know I was in my 30s, so but like I kind of defined my 30s based on like who my girlfriend was at the time. Um,
So, this is going back to season 8. So, that's like 6 seasons ago. So,
yeah,
maybe 2016, 2017, maybe somewhere around there.
yeah. I was actually dating someone that was like a manager of the the babysitter of Eugene Merman. Like
Hmm.
Eugene actually still lives in Massachusetts somewhere, like
Yeah.
on the Cape with his kid right now.
Hmm.
And then she was I think it's such a small place like the Cape that she actually knew the babysitter for Eugene Merman. Um, so I don't know. I guess that was around that time. I remember me going there like killed the relationship. Like I was gone for like 2 months. I didn't like call her or write her. Um, I think she was probably think I was doing some stuff, but I was just like trying to figure out how to lead a team. And uh, what was the question about like going there?
Oh,
Like,
just, going there, like, what was it like going from storyboarding to now you're directing an episode?
um, I think it was. I don't like. I know they asked me to direct that one episode because I was currently doing assistant directing,
Hmm.
which was just like a lot of like thumbing the storyboards for board artists. But I think one of the directors was taking time off, and they needed me to. They needed an emergency director, and I think one of the associate producers thought maybe I should take a shot at it. And then I think maybe I'm not sure. I mean, it would seem too much of a coincidence that it was, John Benjamin doing soccer with, you know, and then they brought back Melissa, and I was just like, this seems a little peculiar. Like, I worked on home movies. This is, if I had a chance, if I could find all the audio that I have for home movies, I could probably edit something together.
Well, when you
Uh,
talked about you being on it, I thought it was because you start to hear those noises or those voices,
yeah,
and then
yeah,
you see the soccer player that resembles, when he's waiting outside of the porta potty. And I was like, man, I know Lauren created home movies, but I was like, why was that? And then you talk about you working on it at the beginning of this episode, and I'm like,
yeah, yeah.
fuck, was it just one of those things where Damon threw it in, or was it something that Lauren wanted in, the writers wanted in to make it kind of like a full circle moment?
If they wanted it in, they were very subtle about it. I think Lauren was open to it because he brought back Melissa,
Mm-hmm.
Melissa Galsky to do the voice for the girl that looked exactly like Melissa with the two like Afro puffs on her
Yeah.
hair. And did they even call her Melissa? I don't know. I don't know. But it was all about soccer, and he was just like, I mean, he was way more tame than McGurk was. But you know, just to have him, I just really wanted him to like start screaming at the kids and saying like horrible things, like I, I don't know, but yeah, it was just I feel like someone brought it up, and maybe it was an idea that passed by, but I never got it confirmed that I was brought in to do the episode. But they never asked me to do another episode, so maybe. But I remember trying to get that character uh inside the show. It was very difficult. Like like I said, there people there are like professionals, and
Mhm.
uh things are done in a certain way, and there's a pipeline of how things go, and I would have to kind of go through the character designers to try to get that character in the show, because usually you have to put like a pre-designed character in an episode, and they're all like numbered, and they make sure that every character doesn't, like, sometimes they repeat, but sometimes they make sure like this character will never be in this episode ever again, so they have to make sure that it's, that number is never made like available again, even though if they delete it from the library it always comes back. um but yeah, I remember I had to go through the character. He wasn't even an artist, but he was like, he managed the character design team, and I remember trying to get him to put this character in, and I remember he's like, who's this guy? I don't know who this guy. Why are you gonna put him in? I was just like, trust me, just put him in there. you know and then like I think I convinced him, but then a day later he quit because he got a new job at like Nickelodeon for writing. And that's when I discovered like a lot of people in LA are kind of just, they're they're there for their main dream of doing whatever they're doing, but they're not there yet, so they take a lot of side gigs. So he was just there, as a side gig, like I'm just managing character stuff, but my real dream is to be a writer. And
Mhm.
once he got that, he just left, and then I had to like, uh as they were scrambling to try to replace him, I had to figure out how to get that character inside the show. But somehow he got in. I think someone showed Lauren, and he thought it was not obvious enough, but it was obvious enough that fans of the show would get it. Um, but yeah, I mean, if it was up to me, I would put like Jason in there, and
Yeah.
and Walter and Perry in the background, but they wouldn't let me do that. Yeah, it was tough. Like a lot of the workers at at Bob's Burgers somehow got their images into the like how they look into the show, and like they're forever they can be used within the character extra library. Um, but I tried to get myself in there, and I haven't been able to do that. So there's a lot of
Haven't been able to do it yet. It's coming.
yeah. It's hard. Someone told me to talk to like these certain people, and um to try to just slip it in. Like, can you put me in the show? It's kind of weird, you know. It's like
Yeah.
I don't know you like that. I'm just here for like 2 months, and trying to get me in the show is difficult. But I did manage to get like my previous art director in the show, and uh yeah, and then there's a guy called Perry Zombalos. He
Mhm.
always makes it into the show, and fans like in message boards always like, who's this guy? He's like, that's Perry. He's, he's the guy that he's a cool guy. You know, he invited me to Taco Tuesday, and he's a little angry, but then he left, and then I think he started working at Rick and Morty. But he always comes like he came actually the next time I came to visit LA, he came by just to say hi. So
That's nice of him.
yeah, he's an overall cool dude. Um,
Anybody that invites you to Taco Tuesday, that's worth the guy
yeah,
having around. You know what I mean?
yeah. It was weird because I was like, I don't know, like most people kind of have a what is that? I mean, you're from Florida, so you probably have the same idea that maybe like everyone has a stereotype of LA people being fake, right?
Hmm.
They're like, oh, they they'll say like, oh, you know, don't don't call us, we'll call you. You know, okay, well, I'll let's do this, but they don't call you back. And uh, I would say like it like outside looking in, it's kind of true, but there are reasons why they do that. Like it's built within like the culture of how Hollywood works as a business. You
Yeah.
know, like it's a
Gotta put up
place
some
where
walls.
yeah, it's a place where dreams are made so that everyone's encouraging, but everyone is like, chances are you're probably not going to make it, but go try it. You know, it's like that. Um, yeah, it was weird. Like at first, I was very like, I think as like an East Coast person, but originally grew up in Hawaii, but then I became very East Coast. That uh, I think I had my guards up, and the way things go in LA, it's like they're hardworking, but the way they come off is not that hardworking. So you think that they're being lazy. So
Hmm.
as I'm trying to direct my like trying to get my team to uh you know put some fire in their ass. They're busy planning like, oh, next week is Comic-Con. I'm gonna be missing this this time period. And you're like, dude, you're far behind. They asked for they like I remember they asked to like to me, it seemed like they wanted to fix the entire show. Like after like we thumbed we thumbed the whole show out, and they looked at it, and they just had like notes for everything. And to me, I was like, oh shit, I did a horrible job, and I'm stressing out. And then was it Mario? Yeah, he was actually they gave me an assistant director to help me out, and he's just like, calm down. Like, you're stressing out, what are you doing? And then it took another director, I think he was from Philadelphia, and he was just like, I think it was weird because like there's like a lot of East Coast people there, and they're like kind of bitter, but they kind of accept LA for what it is. Like I remember there's a whole in the studio. There's a whole bunch of like New Yorkers there. They just hang out with each other and talk about how they miss the food. And you're like, you missed the the pizza, and like the bread. Like yeah, like there's a place that ships the water from New York to LA to try
Oh,
to
for
make the
fuck's
bagels here.
sakes.
And I was just like, I tried it. It's not that I'm not impressed. You know, I'm just like you talk a big game about the pizza, but dude, it's just a cheese pizza that you fold, man. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. But anyway, they they tried to console me that it's going to be okay. These people seem like they're lazy, but when they turn in their work, it's done and it's tip top. And it took me a while to just like a lot of stressing out to kind of just like, all right, it's gonna get
Trust
done.
in the process.
Yeah, it always gets done. Like there's a whole bunch of episodes there that I'm not in the studios, and they always get it done. So I don't get to witness it, but uh, so when I led it, I was just stressing out because in terms of like if I was in a studio that was not in LA, it would be just like, oh, this is a studio killer. This would kill the studio. If we can't get the show done, we're gonna be $1 million in debt, you know. But this is like Fox prime time. $1 million is nothing, right? So,
Yeah, they've done it for quite some time, quite a few series. So I guess they got
yeah,
that shit dialed. And it's almost like Disney. Disney has a way of doing Disney movies. I'm sure Nickelodeon's got their own style, and same thing with Cartoon Network. This is just a
yeah,
style that Fox and Bento works for them.
yeah. And then everyone knows each other in LA, and if an emergency comes, they know who to call to get their stuff done, you know.
Yeah, next person up.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, it's a very interesting place. Like the talent level in LA is, I don't know how to describe it. It's very, it's like kind of like you just get really in awe, like a human being can do this. You know?
Yeah.
I don't know. I remember meeting like musicians in LA, and I don't know how much of a musician you are, but they're like these guys can sight read like an orchestra like thing written for them, and they just perform it just by reading the thing, and then they're done, and then they collect their money and go, and it sounds great, and everyone and they win an award for the best like soundtrack or original score. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, the talent level is I don't know how it's like you know like you ever been to like New York and you meet like people that are like went to Juilliard and then they studied and they do amazing like work in theater, but then you go to their apartment and they live with like five roommates and they share like one bathroom, and you're like, they're living in poverty. Like, you have a grand piano.
That's the artist struggle right there.
Yeah. But yeah, they're struggling. And I'm just like, you shouldn't be struggling. If you lived in Moscow, you'd be fucking wealthy. But in LA, it's kind of like that, where it's just like these people are like Renaissance level, like talented, you know. Um, and they're just making movies, and you're like, you should be painting masterpieces and be having a historian follow you around, you know.
That plays into what we talked about earlier, man. You got to find something that's fulfilling and
Yeah,
something like, they might be able to paint a masterpiece, but they get collectively whole with all those pieces we just talked about by making a little thing animate right in front of them, going from the head down their arm to maybe a piece of paper, a syntax, a tablet, something in that form, and then they get to get their jollies, no pun
yeah,
intended, out of watching a character come to life in front of them.
yeah. Oh, this is probably like a tangent, but I remember I had my birthday during my time I was at there directing, and so my friend came in to from Rhode Island and took me out to an escape room in Hollywood Boulevard, and I remember that being like everyone was in character, playing whatever they were playing in the escape room. Like if they were a vampire, that he was like, I've been pretending I've been a vampire for the past month. I've been wearing these false teeth, and I have a bunch of jokes that I can give it to you, you know, while you're asking me questions. And I remember I was being negative and stuff, and he was just like, you know, what blood type is good for you is be positive. And I'm like, oh,
I
this
knew that
guy's,
one was
this
going.
guy's. And I was like, I never heard that joke. And then it was like, yeah, a music like a guy with I don't know. He's done so much music. He's done Marvel like soundtracks, like musical scores for like Marvel movies. And he's taking me out to an escape room because his girlfriend works there.
Mhm.
And and I remember he said he told his girlfriend that he brought me there, and then the girlfriend was like stressing out because she's like, why didn't you tell me a director was coming there? I would have gotten up. And I'm like, no, I don't hire people. That that's not where my pay grade is. But they were like, oh my god, that could have been my chance. And so there's these guys that are probably like that guy who played that, like who played a vampire, probably had like a British accent and he studied Macbeth. He was just waiting for his shot. But in the
Always ready.
yeah, in the meantime, he's working at at a Hollywood escape room, and I don't know, a lot of There's I met so many people there that were there like whatever you tell them you're looking for, that's their specialty. There's like I've met animators that were like, I'm a stunt coordinator, and I do on Sundays I do an improv comedy troupe. Just like what?
It's well rounded.
Yeah, and then like if you walk down the street, you see like um, offices that try to help people with acting and writing and effects and makeup, and you're like, and if you didn't walk down the street, you would totally pass by it. But like the whole town is just made, I guess specifically Burbank is just like geared toward entertainment and trying to make it whatever you're trying to do. And then and I don't know. Yeah, everyone there's I already said this, everyone there is like above average gorgeous. Even though you're in Florida, so I think in Florida people are above average gorgeous. But I would say there,
Oh, yeah, you got your Walmart fours and your Target sixes around here. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah, yeah. But I remember it was just like shockingly like attractive. People struggling. You're like, why are you struggling? You're like a supermodel. Your skin is perfect. Yeah, I remember seeing like a male actor like at a sushi joint, and I was just like, oh my god, he's shining. He's glowing. He's like I never noticed it on film, but like when you see him, he's like glistening. Like like each hair on his face was like sparkled every time the sun hit it the right way. You're just like, how is this guy not like like an A level actor? Like
He's
I don't know.
glistening at sushi.
Yeah, everyone there is, and I remember at the place I stayed at to direct. This guy was like he did scores for Monk,
Hmm. Oh, I
and
love that show.
yeah, and he had like this whole room dedicated to like mixing music. But then he was from England, and he was kind of struggling at the time, and it was kind of sad to see because he had like a giant like guitar collection, and you knew this guy was like, if he lived in like the 17th century, he would be doing classical music. No. But he's busy just like listening to scores from other movies, and he's trying to figure out what they do, and he's like doing something I can't understand. But there was a time period where he was making lots of money, and that's when he bought this gorgeous house with like tip top stuff. But I think there are times where you feast, and then there's times where you like famine, and he's just kind of on a lull, and that's why he decided to take in a stranger to, to stay at his bedroom to pay for like $800 a month. So I don't know. Um, yeah, I don't know. Uh, yeah, I don't know. It's La La Land. It's like everyone's there has a dream and they're trying to make it happen, and you got to eat, so you got to do these side gigs. Um, yeah.
It's it's innovation at its finest, man.
Yeah.
Um, when you're there and you're working on this episode, we got another episode that you put in here that I think is just absolutely, it's one of the funniest episodes of the entire series, and we'll get to that one in just a second, man. But when you're working on the Hurt Soccer, what's one thing that you might have taken away during that time directing this that you still use in your career now? Anything stick out to you?
Um, I think I think like usually when I went like I did work usually um I'm kind of I'm kind of like a control at like I need to be control everything and be perfectionist and stuff like that.
Hmm.
But I think in terms of like animation, there's just so many wheels turning and so many people uh you know putting their 2 cents in that you kind of have to just trust that the person that's hiring everybody, knows what they're doing, and you really should like trust your team, even though if you're not, even if they're like, they seem like they're not trustworthy, like someone there thought they were. Well, if as long as they're not like related to like the owner, but they thought they were like they hired him based on merit. That if you just kind of let him do what they or her do what they do, you're probably going to get a better product. If you just but if you were just trying to kind of controlling everything, like that's not the way I saw the script. That's not how the joke I thought was going to go. But then this person did it a certain way, and everyone thought it was hilarious. But because I have a big ego, I'm killing that joke. There's some people that do that. I think to I think people that learn how to work with the talent that they have, and then kind of make a show from that, I think those probably are like the most successful people. Like I think
Yeah.
Lauren kind of did that. Like he didn't really have an idea for a show. He didn't pitch a show like this is a show about a guy who eats like he has a cannibalistic burger company. He didn't really pitch that as a great idea. He just kind of got the team together and made sure that everyone is like very good at what they do. And then a show came out from it, and then it eventually evolved into the show that everyone loved. And I think that's a way to kind of approach everything. Like, don't be married to your creative ideas too much, because there are a lot of people that are talented and they want to help you, and they have good ideas, and you can't think of everything yourself. So if you have a comedy show, it's good to hire a bunch of comedians with like different perspectives and different senses of humor and bring them in, and they'll add to the show.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's a team thing. So
Super
but
collaborative.
yeah, so I think in that way I have to kind of like I see a therapist about like my like creative turmoil in my midlife crisis, right? And I think it's just like try not to be a perfectionist. I think there's a lot of people that are perfectionists there, and that usually is like one of the biggest roadblocks there. Like, is the biggest roadblock is usually yourself, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and to try to just, I don't know, the way that I think Lauren said, he kind of said he had to trust the system to work, which is it's kind of hard to do when you like he worked in cable, and so now he moved to prime time, so things are done differently. And he kind of had to trust uh like executive producers like notes, which is opposite what everyone says to you, like, oh, the executive producer doesn't know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But chances are the executive producer has done many things in their lives and been successful at it. So maybe trust the input he has, as long as he's got a good track record of it.
And know a little something about a little something.
Yeah, it's kind of hard because there are a lot of hacks in LA. But it, I think if I was in LA, yeah, you have your detectors like more in tune. Like, this guy does not know what he's doing. He's just uh, kind of reading the script of what he believes everyone should say, and he's getting by. I don't know how he's getting by.
Take it team, make it. Now you had mentioned, that you were talking to a therapist about the perfectionist, and I'm a what you're saying is a lot of the same things that I go through, and then the outlet that I have for my profession is very creative. It's very craft oriented, but it's very creative as well. It rides that fine line, that duality between a craft and an art form,
Yeah,
and that's cooking, and one thing that I've tried to tell myself, and this is probably one of my favorite quotes of all time. Teddy Roosevelt said the comparison was the thief of joy.
okay,
And any time I go week to week, because what I look for, probably the same thing you look for, is consistency, right?
yeah,
I was talking to a storyboard artist, art director, animator, all wrapped up in one. His name is Miles Thompson. He'd been in the industry for quite some time, and I talked to him a couple weeks ago, and he would talk about just that in general. He said animation is like two things, right? You come up with something, And then the second thing you do is you do it again, right? So you
Yeah.
make it move and then you do it again. And he's like consistency, consistency, consistency. And I draw a lot of the same parallels and the correlations to what you guys go through, what you're talking about, and with what I do
Yeah.
is I want it to be perfect every time, but there's something perfect about those imperfections, and I have a hard time. It's easier to say in this time and moment because I don't have my hands on something I'm making and cooking now, right? I'm armchair
Yeah.
quarterbacking this right now, but that quote in particular that I had mentioned at the beginning, comparison is the thief of joy. That thing has helped me out a lot, over these last couple years because
Yeah.
you go and you look at things like, oh, that guy's doing this. That guy did that with the bread. I'm trying to do that. How do I get to that? And I realize that I get wrapped up in chasing or, I get wrapped up in just
Yeah.
comparing me to them or me from 6 months ago to me now. And it's just like, dude, sometimes I just gotta, you gotta stop and smell the rose. You gotta stop and enjoy what you're doing now because just like that,
Yeah. Yeah.
man, your life goes by. You know what I mean? I told you earlier, I got a 15-year-old in 2 days. I don't know where the fucking time went, dude. You know
Yeah.
what I
Yeah.
mean? It's just life just keeps going and going and going. If you don't take time to just pump the brakes and look and see that, oh fuck, I did that, and that was pretty fucking cool. Sitting that and stewing it for a little while. Usually we
Yeah.
sit and stew in the bad shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where it's like,
Yeah.
fuck, I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have done that. But sometimes we got to sit back and stew in the good stuff.
Yeah. I think yeah, that you have to kind of let go and kind
Hmm.
of
That's the hard part. It's the scary part.
yeah, it's a scary part because you're kind of entering the unknown.
Hmm.
And then yeah,
Jesus, take the wheel, if you will.
yeah,
And I'm not
possibly.
religious, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. Um, like I think someone told me it was like stepping into the darkness and then kind of I don't know. It's scary, but you have to kind of do it and you have to kind of ride the wave and you kind of have to also steer, you know. Like I like for cooking, you have to be like it's true, you have to be consistent. But then there's like little instances where you kind of want to insert your creativity in there, but you can't do it too much. Like say if you made like I made this plate, but I decided, I wanted to take this direction. And for you, it's different. But what do you think? Like you're not allowed to do that, right?
Well, yeah, you can. So the good thing about my industry, and I'm pretty sure you can do the same thing, is like whenever we're coming up with a dish,
Yeah.
it's like I said, it's a lot like animation. It's super collaborative. You might have like so the way I work is I'll go, oh fuck, I have this dish that I'm trying to get on the menu right now, and it's one of my favorite dishes, and it's when I think of this dish, I think of my great grandmother, my granny,
Yeah.
and it was chicken and dumplings. It's something that is like my favorite dish of all time. It's
Yeah.
something that is so special. You remember the movie Ratatouille? And ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna
Yeah.
tell
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
story again, so I apologize. That moment where Ego is eating the ratatouille at the end of the movie, and he drops his fork, and he gets flashback to that time where he's eating ratatouille. He just skinned his knee, and his mom is making him his favorite dish, right? So that's the goal, and that's what every chef in the industry
Yeah.
chases. I don't give a fuck what anybody says. That's the thing that everybody chases is a personal connection to your food, to something that they had in the past or something that they're going to remember for the rest of life. Same thing with animation for me. I point out these connections. I'm like, oh fuck, I'm going to remember this for the rest of my life. That thing reminded me of this when I was a kid, right? So this dish that I'm working on now, very few and far between will I have a fully conceptualized dish from start to finish before I
Yeah.
pitch it, right? I'll go in there and say, oh, I want to do something with chicken. And then I start to look at the menu and I go, oh fuck, well, we haven't done too much Thai or we haven't done too much this, we haven't done too much that. So let's kind of bring those elements and I'll bounce them off of somebody. Not everybody, right? So I'm not
Yeah.
going to those executive producers at this. I'm going to a couple people that I know and I trust, whether they're palates, their instincts, whether I understand like they have like my best interest at heart. Like we're going for the same thing, good dish. Doesn't matter who
Yeah.
came up with it at the end of the day, right? And I'll go and just bounce ideas off. And by the time we've talked for like 5 or 10 minutes, we've created an entire 3, 4 new dishes for in a menu. And I only set out to put chicken and dumplings on the menu. Right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how that process works. And everybody's process is different, just like you guys. Everybody's process in the animation industry is different.
Yeah. There's
You know.
similarities.
Oh,
Like
100%.
I think
Foundational pieces.
that's like a new thing everyone like consistency is like a new quality that in creativity that I have never explored or told people that that's how important that is. Usually, I tell them like originality, find your style and shit like that.
Hmm.
But I remember you're in basketball, right? Do you
Oh, yeah.
watch like I watch like a lot of the pros now have like, they have their own podcasts and they explain
Hmm.
like their training. And I remember watching stuff like about Jordan and and Kobe Bryant. And like they're very creative when they perform, but when they're practicing, they keep a consistency going on. Like there's
Regimented.
yeah, like and to be good to your teammates is to always come back and everyone like expects you to be you. Um, and I never thought of that in terms of like the arts, because I always thought like it's your voice that should be important, and there should be a very unique voice coming from somewhere. But I think I was just like I don't know, I have like a 3-year-old, and I always imagined drawing with my kid would be like a magical moment,
Hmm.
but it's not. It's horrible. It's like they're doing everything wrong. You demonstrate that you could draw a car, and the next thing you know, he doesn't want to draw any cars. He wants you to draw cars, and then it just becomes something that like this is not how my fantasy was, right? And you're like trying to explain to them that's not how you do it. There's a process, and every time it comes to that, it's like there's a process and a way to do something, and a state of mind you have to be in, and it has to be consistent. I'm like, okay, this consistency thing has been coming up a lot. Like,
Well, with kids in particular, though,
yeah,
my I'm not a very patient person for certain things,
yeah,
but I am super patient in things like cooking. So when I'm drawing the correlation between what you're saying and what I'm going to say, it's so I take my oldest kid in here, right?
yeah,
And he'll come in and he'll ask me questions about cooking. Excuse me. And I'm super patient when it comes to cooking. God damn it. I'm super patient when it comes to cooking because I think cooking is something that everybody should know how to do. At the very least, something foundational. Know how to
yeah,
make scrambled eggs. Know how, Jesus fucking Christ, dude. Know how to make scrambled eggs. Know how to make spaghetti sauce, mashed potatoes, something that is so easy, but yet it's
yeah,
so fiscally responsible and is so cheap at the end of the day that you know how to feed yourself at the darkest moments of your life. Your dad, mom are in the picture. You don't have a lot of money. At least I know how to make scrambled eggs. At least I know how to make pasta, something that's filling, something that's
yeah,
wholesome, something along those lines. So when I show him these things, I've got so much time for somebody that wants to invest in something like cooking because like I said, I do think it's something that is very pure. Now with
yeah,
art and your kid, the way I would look at it, because I used to draw way back in the day. I wanted to do what you did when I was younger. Before I found cooking, I wanted to do what you guys did. And
yeah,
then I did the tour at Universal Studios right before they moved SpongeBob SquarePants, before SpongeBob SquarePants came out, right?
yeah, yeah,
Down there. And one more time. I don't know what the fuck is going on today, dude. Probably I had a coffee before I drank here, so I had a little bit too much cream in there. Maybe that's what it was. Need to
yeah,
start drinking it black like a real man. You know what I mean? Anyways, so we go to Universal Studios and they're handing out all these tickets and they say, "Hey, we're working on a new show that's coming out soon. Stop by." And I remember, and it's right where the Jimmy Fallon ride is now. And you're looking down, and I see this one. And I'm young as shit. I'm 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, somewhere around there, young.
yeah,
And I see this one artist down there and he's drawing. I can't remember what he was drawing, but he kept tearing it down, balling it up, and throwing it away. And I remember seeing this pile of fucking paper balled up. And I'm balls deep into drawing right now. I'm drawing all my
yeah,
favorite Dragon Ball Z characters. I'm drawing all my favorite cartoons. I'm drawing a massive amount of shit. And I'm knee deep. I'm gonna be an animator one day. That's my mindset. And I
yeah,
see this guy, and I remember asking this lady, I'm like, why does he keep throwing that shit away? I didn't say shit as a 9 year old, but like, why does he keep throwing that away? And she goes, "Oh, if it's not the way it's supposed to be, he has to start over." And I go and I look, I'm like, I had that realization right there. I'm like, well, fuck, man, my mom hangs up all of my pictures. I don't have bad pictures, so I don't think I could do this for a living. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And it was that realization right there that it's just like, all right, I gave up on that. Now I'm going to switch back to this cooking thing for just a second. And I start putting it into that perspective. And then,
yeah,
like I said, my kids come into it. And I didn't realize that I threw away just as many dishes that didn't come out as that artist was throwing away that he wasn't getting them correctly. And conversely, right? I tell my
yeah,
kid that. I tell my kid, I was like, you're going to fuck up and you're going to fuck up more than you're going to create or you're going to knock out of the park when you first start doing anything. So
yeah,
just hold on to those fuck ups. Realize like, oh shit, I should have zigged when I should have zagged, or I should have added this instead of this. I should have cooked it longer and I should have cooked it less. Just remember those. And then by the time you're all done, this is where that conflict, that duality between a craft and an art form really come into place. Because you're an
yeah,
artist at the end of the day, right? You're super
yeah,
creative at
yeah,
the end of the day, but you have to put in those 10,000 hours. You have to
yeah,
sit there and throw away 10,000 drawings before you get that fucking one that goes, holy shit, I knocked it out. I did this. This is perfect. You know what I
Yeah, there's a lot of work that goes into it. And then
mean?
it just only makes you appreciate when you see someone that has the raw talent. You're like, oh shit, this guy's a gem. We have to, you have to, we have to somehow use him while he's cheap. Um, but yeah,
But keep
there's
drawing with your kids, though. I have to
yeah,
imagine that eventually, just have fun. Don't look at it as like a oh fuck, it's got to be perfect or
yeah,
man, that's just what homeboy's seeing right now in his head. He's just seeing he sees that car that might be a little wonky. It might have like three wheels instead of four wheels. You know what I mean? It might be a little
yeah,
off kilter. That bitch ain't aerodynamic at all. It's hitting all the drag. It's gonna get 12 miles per gallon instead of 22 miles per gallon. You know
yeah.
what I mean?
I
But
think
just
that's
sit back and kick it.
yeah, that's what my like. That's the other thing I talk about with my therapist is just like raising my kids, and it's usually just he says to kind of just approach it as let's see what happens rather than like I don't know,
Expectations.
yeah, where like I have that in my head how drawing with my kids should have been. And I've compared notes with other fathers that in the same field, and they're just like, no, yeah, it's not magical. It's a slow process. Baby steps. You don't realize
Yeah.
how slow baby steps are until you have a baby. you know,
Oh yeah. You
you know,
realize when you're going at a mile or when you go to 100 miles a minute and you
yeah,
realize you got to hit that brake and you got to start going fucking five below the speed limit. You're like, well, shit, this is a detour because you get all gassed up. It's
yeah,
very like, I don't know how about you, but like my line of work, dude, I get up and get out of the house by 3:30, 4 o'clock every single day, Monday through Friday, right?
yeah,
And I'm there and I'm on a clock from the time I wake up to the time I go to sleep. I'm on a fucking clock. I got to hurry up and get to work so I can hurry up and knock out shit so they can have all the shit they need for service so we can be ready to go right when they say go, right? Right when that
yeah,
fucking bell goes off, right? And then I got to hurry up and get home. I got to spend as much time, and a lot of this has to do with the military too, because I had to cram 5 pounds of shit in a 2 pound bag because I never knew
yeah,
when I was going to deploy. So I wanted to be able to get as much fun as I could in. And I suck at being a dad a lot of times. I'm good like fucking 10% of the time.
yeah,
90% of the time I always feel like I can do better. I think that's every good
yeah,
parent goes, I could have did
yeah,
better. I could have not
yeah,
yelled. I could have not said this. I could have did this instead of that. I could have reacted this way instead of that way. But that's the fucking part about growing as a human. There's if this shit called parenting was like everybody had it knocked out of the park, or everybody had it dialed in, everybody would be
yeah,
parenting the same fucking way. But
yeah,
nobody knows. Every kid is different. You know what I mean?
yeah,
But it's just this way of having to like your kids realize that you have to slow down. Because like I said, I got a 15-year-old 2 days, 4-year-old in fucking 6 months, a 2-year-old in 4 months. I'm like, where the fuck is the time going? I think they're put here not only to increase, your compassion, your empathy, your love, but they're
yeah,
also here as a reminder, like, hey, slow down because this shit is going to end at one point in time. So enjoy that while you got it. Enjoy it
yeah.
while you got it. Excuse me.
Yeah, yeah, it's a lot. Usually, like I hired my therapist to talk about my career, but usually it's always about the kids because this is all new to me.
Hmm.
Um, even just like raising a dog is it's like new to me. But in some ways, it's easier to train a dog. Um,
Oh, it is. It
yeah,
is. They're so
uh,
easily motivated. Mine's
yeah,
been sitting here sleeping and scratching and sleeping and scratching. I'm pretty sure she farted at least 4 times in here. She's sitting over there now. She's passed out, man. They're so much easier than kids. But
yeah,
like my kids are like my favorite people in the world, though. You know what I mean?
yeah. Because I don't know, it's like a cliche. It's like they're pure. It's like
They are.
um. Yeah, it's like as whenever I get frustrated with my kid, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna put him out in the garbage. And then one he'll say something like that just like tugs at my heart, and I'm just like, oh man, you drag me back into wanting to race you.
Every time I get out, you pull me right back in. It's the same fucking way, dude. The
Yeah,
4-year-old I got, and then the almost 2-year-old I got, they go at it back and forth. And then like
yeah,
right when you feel like had enough and you're about to blow up, and like I fucking told you guys to stop, you walk in there and they're all quiet and they're sitting next to each other, they're leaning on each other, or they're laying down together and they're watching the same show, or they're just talking and jibber jabbering together, and you're like, all right, man. So you guys do like each other. I guess I don't have
yeah,
to. I guess I don't have to be dad right now. I can just sit back here and be a objective observer.
yeah. The 3-year old and my 2-year old daughter, they just fight over toys, even
Hmm.
if we buy them the same stuff they want, what
Oh
they
yeah.
have,
Hmm.
and they fight so much, and the older one is just so unfair to, to the to the 2-year-old because like I don't know. It's just like whenever she has fun, he wants that to end, and he wants it to happen to him, you know.
Oh yeah.
And then I remember I was looking at because I have like a bunch of cameras on because I have to like monitor them as, but also work at home. And then I'm looking at them while I'm like on like talking to my therapist, and then I see them playing and then hugging each other and giggling. I'm like, what? Like they don't do this. Usually they're fighting over who gets to sit on daddy, you know? And then it was just like, oh, maybe the problem is, might be me, my presence there is causing the competition, when in reality they could be like, they're going to look out for each other when when they finally go to school with each other.
Oh, 100% they will, dude, because
Yeah.
so Cooper, he is 100% through and through me, right? My
Yeah.
oldest is 100% my wife, my youngest is 100% like my wife. And I remember the first time I told Natty, the youngest one we have, the little girl we have, I told her no. And they had just got done bickering and fighting all fucking day. And then Natalie came up and asked me for something. And I was like, no, you're not getting it. I said no. And then she puts her little lip out. She starts pouting. Then she
Yeah.
starts crying. Uh-huh. And then Cooper, the boy, comes over and he's like, don't you ever tell my Natty no. That was very mean and very rude of you. And I'm like, dude, you just fucking threw a ball at her face. And you were arguing with her because she took your shoes and they ended up being her shoes, not your shoes. Where did this energy come from? Keep that same energy all the way through. So, but it's just they love each other. It's just they're little monkeys, right?
Yeah.
They don't have these they don't have the same kind of language that we have to talk about empathy and all of these other emotions that we go through.
Yeah.
I had a psychology teacher when I was going through college. He told me that the difference between men and women is men have this very limited range of how to express their emotions, right? Think
Yeah.
about it as a box of crayons. Men have an 8 color count crayon box that's fucking fallen apart, been taped up. Half the crayons are broken, right? And he's like, the women, they have the 24 beautiful box set of crayons. They've got the sharpener in the back. They've got the little sparkly crayons in there too. And that's their emotional range. And he was like, this is why we have such a hard time communicating with one another because all
Yeah.
we think of is angry, tired, hungry, horny, sad. And then women have mad, upset, depressed, angry, this, that. And like three of the things that he mentioned off was like one of the things that men have. And we got it wrapped all into one. So
Yeah.
that kind of put my mind into a little bit of a perspective of thinking about shit like that too.
Yeah, it's kind of hard because like also like when you're like a new parent, everyone tries to tell you how to parent, and then
Hmm.
it can get confusing and it's kind of also frustrating. And then like my wife, like her favorite thing is like not her favorite thing, but she always sends me like how to parent Instagram memes like every time. And then I was like this guy doesn't know how to parent. He has one kid. Why is he suddenly an expert? um, but yeah, it's just
Send me the tired dad that's got 4 kids that's been up since two
yeah,
o'clock in the morning changing shitty diapers, hasn't had breakfast. It's 9 o'clock and he's got a caffeine headache with no coffee in him.
yeah.
Give me those Instagram videos.
Yeah, it was just like he's trying to tell us not to scold our kid or say no to our kid. And I'm just like, how do you not say no to your kid? And then my wife is buying into it, and she actually does she's a behavior therapist that kind of helps kids with autism, so she's
Hmm.
patient that way. But like she'll kind of like get these memes from and suggestions on how to parent from these people that I don't know who they are, and I'm just like, dude, I grew up as an immigrant and my mom beat me. It's just like, and I'm okay with it, and I actually have like fond conversations with other people that are in the same position as I am, you know, and I still love my mom and dad, but I don't know. It's just I don't know. It's just like too high expectation that she sends. mean, I don't know where I'm going with this.
Oh no, it's perfectly fine because this is the perfect segue for this, and I figure we can end it on this episode, right? And the podcast on this episode, Equestranauts, right? I
Yeah, yeah.
love this episode because it talks about everything that we've just talked about in this episode. Doesn't seem like it, but I'm gonna spin this web into making sure this is the best segue you've ever heard, Damon.
All
So
right.
buckle up for this one, Equestranauts, right? But what I loved about this episode was you've got Tina that loses this horse that is so valuable on the outside market that nobody knows, right? That
Yeah.
she has to enlist her dad into becoming essentially a brony, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
Equestranauts. So he has to read 1,400 pages of fan fiction. He has to watch all of these DVDs. He has to cram essentially the night before a test is due to hopefully infiltrate the Equestranauts
Yeah, yeah.
and get her pony back. So this is why we were talking about being parents right here.
Hmm.
This is what it means to be a dad, to sacrifice everything, to give your kids, you're your hero until they're not, or you're their hero until you're not, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Bob was the hero for this. He was the hero for Tina. He almost got a tramp stamp of one of these ponies on him. So
Yeah, that tramp stamp has now appeared in countless episodes. And if you don't draw it in, fans
people
will
get
know.
upset. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, you know what I mean. So it's a fun episode, man. I would love to know, how do you get to working on this one? Was this one just handed out? How does it come to be?
Uh, well, just kind of going along with that theme. It's like the whole episode was just made for that last scene where Tina says, "I'm done with horses." And
Play with
Bob
the
is just
horse,
like,
Tina.
"Play with the fucking horse."
Best scene in the entire fucking show, by the way.
It was for that joke. Because it was just like, I've been through too much shit for this for you to all of a sudden grow up.
And we've all been there for parents, and I know our parents have been there too. Think about how many Black Fridays they went to get that
Yeah,
one toy, that one action figure that you absolutely needed to have, but it
yeah,
sold out early.
yeah. I think okay. So I think from the beginning, this episode is probably the only episode that um Dan Dan the guy who does what Tina's voice, I forget his name slipping my mind, but Dan
Oh, oh, I'll look it up.
not Minsk.
Is it Mentz? I have such a hard time remembering everybody's name. But
Yeah,
God, I feel like such a shitty fan. Dan Mintz.
Dan
Um,
Minsk. Sounds
yeah,
right. Okay.
yeah, Mintz. Yeah.
So this is the one episode that he wrote. Like he actually is in he lives in Hollywood as a writer, and I think he wrote for like that show, the VP. I think he wrote
Hmm.
that. He was work. That's one of his main gigs in the show. But and I think he does like other comedy stuff, and that's how he was discovered. Like John Benjamin said, you gotta hire this guy. He does stand up, but his voice, you gotta listen to his voice. But yeah, he wrote the episode, and yeah, he probably just discovered what bronies were, and
Hmm.
he decided to write an episode all about it. And I don't know if this little, I think I explained it on another podcast, but I live in Rhode Island, and one of the big companies that are in Rhode Island, there's like CVS, and then there's Hasbro, right? And Hasbro was actually like, I could walk there in my old house. Um, and I had a company with a friend, and then we did like uh, kind of like a side gig of like work, like freelance work for Hasbro. And then it was like that same exact day I had a meeting with the people who managed My Little Pony, right? And they were saying, I don't know, this is all public, so that I could say they were going to release like My Little Pony was very popular, especially, and then it was creating bronies and stuff like that. But I think they were trying to write it, and they were going to introduce a new segment to My Little Pony, which they made the ponies anthropomorphic humans, right? Like all of a sudden, there's some magic happening, and they become humans, and they go to high school, right? That was the whole thing. It was that day that they told us that, and then later that afternoon, that was in the morning, but because they're in LA, my day starts at 12. Tyree Dillahay, the director, um, sends me like a text like, next episode's about bronies. Go research it. Right? And then um yeah, then I just like got introduced to the world of bronies, and I was just like, whoa, this is crazy. Like I'm in animation, and I did watch the My Little Pony, the new My Little Pony, and it is a quality show with quality animation and top notch voice acting. But it just captured the hearts of like, I don't know, people that it was not meant to capture. Right? It was like
Yeah.
teenage boys all the way up to 40-year-old men. Right? You're just like, and so I had to like research bronies, and then I had to like write back Hasbro, the person that manages, like they were gonna call it Equestria Girls, and but all of a sudden, we're gonna at the same day we're creating a show called Equesticles with Equestranauts, right? So I had to write like I'm doing something for this company. Uh, I'm not spilling like secrets to anybody. It's just a coincidence, right?
Talk about a
But
coinky dink, huh?
yeah, and I can't tell them what you know, the secret from that, that they're writing, and I can't tell them, either way. But I think in that sense, it made the show a lot more fun to work with, especially when like,
Did it
uh,
seem real? Because that just seems like a simulation right there.
yeah, it was weird because like I didn't know what bronies were, and then I kind of got thrown into it, and then I remember I was just like I knee deep in bronies. I know about bronies, and then the episode comes out, and they were all the bronies were like, they're not really bronies, they're more furries. And so I had to go research furries, and that became very disturbing. There's like it's somewhere in Europe there's like right wing like white nationalist furries. It's like
What?
they're like Nazi fur, like people who dress up as like animals, and they're like right wing Nazis.
Jesus Christ, dude. That's
Yeah,
insane.
it was weird. It was very weird. And they're the attire they dressed up is matching. Um, but yeah, it was a very fun episode to work on, especially when as we were working on it, it was gonna be a lot more pervy, but as we learned more about bronies, like, oh, actually these guys are actually kind of sweet. So they,
Yeah.
they kind of changed the direction of how the episode was gonna be. But I loved Bronconius. I think he should make a reappearance somewhere because he was deliciously evil.
I do too, man.
Yeah,
And I love, you know, what's fun about this show in particular, not just this episode, but the show in general, is have you watched Bluey yet with your kids?
oh yeah, just nonstop. This is what we do.
So, so it's so fucking hard. Like you hear women talk about the unjust standards that Instagram models set for women, right?
Yeah,
Like Bandit sets unrealistic
I
expectations for
know.
fathers. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And it's you can say the same thing about Bob Belcher, right?
yeah, yeah,
And what I love about this show is there's so many things: the humor, the writing, the voice acting, the art, just the nuance between the characters, the pop culture references, the movie references that you guys pay homage to,
yeah,
but what I love the most about this is each one of these characters feel real, but you're like Bob Belcher is like a realistic dad I can be. You could see him get frustrated with his family. You see it
yeah,
because nobody's perfect. You get frustrated. You can see him go out on a limb for his kids. You see it with him and Luis. You see it with him and Jean, and you see it
yeah,
with him front and center with him and Tina. Like he is like the true definition of what a dad could and should and would be if he was a real fucking person, man. So he goes through the ringer essentially to get this goddamn horse back, this pony for Tina. And then, like I said, the whole vessel for this episode, like you had mentioned, was just to get that. You play with that. No, Bandy screams. You play with it, and her
I
do do do
know.
do do playing at the end. It was such a beautiful moment. And I love when you get to see like Bob like be like a legitimate dad, and he realizes like fuck. I gotta go be Superman for these
Yeah,
goddamn kids one more time. You know what I mean?
yeah. There's some delicious moments. There's like,
Just
where
crucible.
they gave me Tyree Dillahay was the director, and he was just like he gave me the scene where he drinks their their with their horse alcohol, and he gets
Hmm.
high. And then he actually was a big fan of this animator. You might know him as Robert Valley. Uh,
The name sounds familiar.
yeah, he did like a I don't know. If you look him up, he's done a lot of like oh he's done those things. He's just like kind of like an animator's animator. He's very good. Um,
Write him
he was
down.
just like copy this sequence that he animated, and we're gonna make that his scene where he gets high. It was just like it was really good. I mean, it was fun to work with him, and then yeah, there's like when was that when Linda goes to the dance party and then the kids are like, we have to find dad, and she's like, you guys never take me dancing. I was just like, and then also like the plot twist where it suddenly goes from I'm collecting ponies to I'm collecting ponies so that I can live forever. And I absorb their power. And you're just like, oh shit, this is gone. This episode has changed genres. Um, yeah, I think yeah, there's a lot of good moments in there, and I wish Dan Minsk would write more because that was a very unique episode. Like
It's very
usually,
fun.
yeah, usually there's like a formula that we always kind of been through with Bob's. It's always like B story, A story, and then you're like the B story and the A story don't even like intertwine or meet together. Like there's just two different stories in one episode. But this story was just like solid. Everything works together. Everyone, even the B story is kind of like melded with the A story, if there is a B story. And yeah, and we got to experiment more. Like, I think like during that time period, I think we had a lot more freedom to like move the camera around. I think compared to like future seasons. Uh, yeah, and we took advantage of it too. But it was a very difficult episode.
Oh,
Uh,
I can imagine. It was a lot of fun watching this one as a fan, dude. And it's when you watch something so many times, it kind of like loses its luster. But one thing I've loved about rewatching this one with my fam or this series with my family is like everything gets funnier. Like the more you watch, and especially this one. This one I've watched so many times just because you weren't the only one that brought up this episode. Was it? I think Scott had mentioned this one, and I know somebody that I had on recently mentioned this episode in particular. So this is like the third or fourth time in just a couple weeks that I've watched this episode again, and
yeah,
it's like it gets funnier and funnier, and like I said, my favorite part is the end of that episode where he's just walking by and she's
yeah,
putting shit in a shoebox, and to find out that that was all told just so you guys could work backwards to get to that joke, it's
yeah,
a special episode for sure.
yeah. It's almost kind of like a microcosm of like you being a parent where like your kid like all of a sudden likes Mickey Mouse, and
Hmm.
so his birthday comes, he gets nothing but Mickey Mouse, and by the time his birthday came, he's moved on and he doesn't want any of that shit anymore.
By next week, Mickey Mouse is a forgotten memory.
Yeah, it's been like that for food, where he's just like, I want turkey rice, mashed that baby food turkey rice. That's all I'm
Hmm.
gonna eat. So we buy like 2 months worth, and then all of a sudden he doesn't want to eat it anymore. You're like, what are we gonna do with it? And so we just freeze it and give it to the dogs.
It'll come back in style eventually.
Yeah, the middle kid eats it once in a while, but oh my god, yeah, it's been a constant like theme with them, and then it just makes me remember like my own childhood where like my dad would be like, oh, so you like beef and tomatoes together, and so like he would start making beef and tomatoes every day, and each time it would get more watered down. The meat would get more like sinewy and hard to chew, and eventually we would hate it, you know.
Yeah.
But then it was just like, oh, that's what he was doing. He was just trying to make me happy when in reality, I was being an asshole and telling him I don't like his cooking.
Isn't it funny how as we get older, we lack perspective at such a young age, and then
Yeah,
as we grow and as we have kids and as we get out there and we gain perspective, we realize, fuck, man, dad, mom, they were kind of right, and I was a dick, man. But
yeah,
you can't really fault yourself too much because you only know what you know. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Especially at such a young age, when your whole world is just you and your friends. It's kind of hard not to be fucking self-centered and a little narcissistic from time to time. I know I was an asshole. I'm still an asshole from time to time, but I was
yeah,
a big dick back when I was younger.
yeah. It was a like you live with a different narrative for like your entire life until you reach that point where you're like, oh, my that's what my parents were doing, you know.
Yeah.
And I remember I was always lamenting that like from like from like as far as I can remember, like being born until like uh age 6, we would go to the beach like every weekend or as much as possible, right? So we were like beach kids. And then my dad got laid off, and then that just ended. We never go to the beach. I never learned how to swim in Hawaii. Made my life very hard to be, socially, especially if kids are like having pool parties or inviting you to the beach, and you're like, I don't know how to swim. I'm gonna drown. And also, I have weird tan lines because I never take my shirt off. Kids make fun of that. But then, as I'm like taking my kid to the beach, I'm just like, oh, I have no idea what to bring this kid to. And there's a beach, so I'm taking him to the beach. So my parents were just like, I don't know what to do, but we're in Hawaii, so let's take him to the beach. Also, like it's the same thing with like Christmas. They're like, immigrants from Hong Kong. They don't really know what Christmas is about. And as a kid, you just kind of, like, okay, there's Santa Claus. There's something about Jesus. I don't know anything about this church thing that every other kid goes to. And then, you learn about this expectation of, being nice, and then Santa will give you gifts. And there's like entry drug into religion, right? You're like,
Yeah.
and then, but then, my parents would never deliver that. They would be like, okay, I see what Americans do. They buy a tree, they wrap gifts, and they give you on Christmas. But they never did the little detail that, you need to send a gift in the name of Santa for them to feel like they were a good kid. Especially when they go back to school and all the other kids will have show and tell, and they tell them what they got for Christmas. And they got way more stuff than, what we did, because um they don't celebrate Christmas. Like if they were just like, if school was just geared toward like how much money did you get during Chinese New Year's, I would be like like a great kid. But I grew up thinking I sucked as a kid from like 4 years old to 7 years old. It's just like,
Well, I'm here to tell you, man, you don't suck at all. You're a good fucking dude.
no, I was a great kid. I was a very
Yeah.
good kid. Everything. I think I overcompensated. Where like all the teachers thought I was like the most obedient, like quiet, like kid that did everything. But I was only doing it because I was like, this time Santa's gonna give me a gift. And then
I'm
your
gonna
world
get my name on his list.
yeah, and then the world kind of crashes, where your brother is like, there's no Santa Claus, you know that, right? Like, what are you talking about? There's no Santa Claus.
So I was good for no fucking reason.
Yeah,
Anarchy is what young Damon was singing.
yeah. And right now we're kind of going through the same thing, because my wife is Jewish, so she's trying to like raise them Jewish. And then but then he goes to daycare, and he comes back with like Santa Claus, Santa Claus, Santa Claus. He's talking about Santa Claus. And then, cartoon comes up with Santa Claus, and they're explaining something that my wife is like, oh, don't do that. No, it'll get confusing. But then he'll be like, no, I want to see what happens. like, like, okay, we have to kind of explain to them, like, you're Jewish. Dad's not Jewish. Mom's Jewish. Dad's Jewish. The thing that we go to, they're Jewish. You're gonna get gifts at a different time. It's similar, but there's a lot of nuance in it. You're just like, okay, yeah, this is new for me, but I could always ask other like parents about it. But I remember asking my mom, and she felt guilt over that. where she's just like, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just trying to be American. You know?
Goes back to what we previously said, man. You only know what you know.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Oh, it's gonna be nothing but fun, man. If I could leave you with one more piece of advice. I mean, you work on the show, so you get to work on these characters all the time, dude. I try to implement as much of Bob as my parenting style as I possibly can. Like, I wish I could be a little bit more laid back. I wish I could be, a little bit more patient in certain aspects of life. I know I'm patient in certain things, but there's other things I wish I was a little bit more patient in,
Yeah.
But it's just like try to be more like Bob, man. See how shit goes, come as it goes.
Yeah. I wish I was a little more ignorant. I don't know how to say it, but like I I started working on home movies, and so like I've always lived with John Benjamin's voice in my head, and
Hmm.
I know where he's comes from, but like whenever hear him, he's still McGurk, you know.
Yeah.
He's still that horrible soccer teacher for kids. Even when I've seen John Benjamin in real life, he's standing there and John like McGurk's voice is coming out of him. I'm just like McGurk is in a sound booth doing his voice, and they're dubbing it over his little guy's mouth, you know. And that's how I see him. And I know like he's also Archer, you know,
Hmm.
and that those two are just like they're not they're not they're
No, they're
not dad material.
diabolical human beings.
Yeah, they're the exact opposite of dad material. And then there's Bob, and you're like, I like he says him as a dad, but I love McGurk, you know, because it was so fun to just whenever we hear like a new episode in like from home movies, it was just like it was great. It was like you hear a stand-up comedian's routine for the first time, and
Hmm.
you're like he's making this stuff up, and he's very good at stand-up because he's an asshole. Like the real life actor, he's very he's a nice guy now because he's kind of like a fat, he's 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 a dad now and he's raising a
Hmm.
kid and he's just kind of calm down. But oh my God, he's a troublemaker. He
Yeah.
just if you try to do something with him, he's gonna try to throw a wrench in the whole system and cause people to be very uncomfortable. And that's why he's a good at improv because he likes to make trouble.
Likes to throw monkey wrenches in there every once in a while.
Yeah, and he can do that because he sounds like a dick, and and it works in cartoon form. But I remember like we're at the studio in Watertown, and I remember one of my friends that worked on the episode. He was so mad at him because he just was a dick and he sounded like a dick, but it's real life. He's not a cartoon character. And then a producer was like, "No, he was just trying to be funny. He wasn't trying to kick you out of this. He wasn't trying to kick you out of the recording studio. He was just trying to make a joke about you guys getting free food at recordings." But the way my friend took it, he was just like, "I don't like the guy anymore. I hate his listening to his voice. I want to punch him in the throat." And I'm like, "Yeah, can you guys keep it down?"
Try not to get fired here, guy. Shut the fuck up, please.
Yeah, and the guy can't be bad. I mean, like he's very well liked in like the like at least in like the East Coast like stand-up comedians scene, and
Yeah.
he's very successful just for using his voice alone.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, if I've learned anything from this episode is I'd love to have you back on so we can do some home movies chatting because, like I said, that's a show that I don't think gets enough love, doesn't get brought up enough, and I've never had anybody on to deep dive into that one. So if you're up for it, man, we'll shoot for some dates. Maybe next month sometime if you got some free time,
oh yeah,
and then get you back on and we can do some deep dive into that one because that's a special show. Um,
yeah,
well, like I said, I had a blast chatting with you, man. I don't know what you were expecting when you came on, but I had fun. Wherever that's what I love about podcasts, man. It goes wherever the conversation goes, man. We got some inspirational shit out of there. We got to talk about parenting techniques both on my side and your side, and good, bad,
yeah,
and the ugly part about parenting. We got to talk about some Bob's Burger stuff too, which I'm always grateful, man. If it wasn't for this show, man. we'd be probably fucking watching Grey's Anatomy, The Rookie,
Yeah.
something like I don't watch it. I just fucking find any way to watch animation or the NBA right now if one of those two shows is on.
Yeah.
But it's fun getting to share this show that you guys work so hard on with my family and having, a fan base essentially inside my house because I don't know how insulated you are, from the fan base, or if you like to get out and talk with some of the people from the fan base. But Bob's has got one of the nicest fan bases I've ever been a part of, man.
Yeah.
Few of the other shows that I've been lucky, and I say that in air quotes because some of them kind of dicks. There's a few fan bases out there that's got some of the most toxic people. I hate using that
There
word. I think
are.
it's so
Yeah.
so overused. Some of the most toxic fan bases out there. And I've never met one bad, like, I've never had one bad fan interaction that's Bob's has come up. Everybody's always happy and everybody's smiling. And that goes to show the testament of the hard work that you guys do, from the art to the writing
Yeah.
to the voices to everything and in between, man. You guys fucking crush it. So from me to you, man, thanks for what you guys do.
Yeah. That's how I feel about like My Little Pony,
Mhm.
when I saw the fan base, I was just like, yeah, we can't make fun of these guys. These are
No.
sweethearts. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to highlight it, man. You got to show how
Yeah.
good it is. Different
Yeah.
strokes for different folks is what they like to
Yeah.
say.
That's it.
Well,
Yeah.
like I said, man, I had a lot of fun, man. I can't wait to do this again. He's been Damon. I've been Julian. This has been the Cartoon
Okay.
Chronicles podcast, and this has been another piece of your childhood. Good night.
All right. Thank you.
Hit pause.